everyone, welcome to our first Ladies Who Launch event. For those of you who are new today, with regards to the Women in Tech initiative, to give you a bit of a background, myself and a few of my colleagues started the initiative just under a year ago, and since then we've managed to grow out a community of over 2,500 members, which has been great. We actually last month hosted our first global Women in Tech Week, where we had speakers across the Netherlands, the UK, the US and Germany, across 4 events, and we had over 500 attendees throughout the week, which was great. And then today we're hosting our first Ladies Who Launch event. So this is more sort of focused around entrepreneur-based topics, and yeah, so thank you all for joining. We're also today joined by 3 amazing industry professionals, Ami, Leitha and Ebere, who will be speaking today. First of all, I'd like to introduce you all to Ami, who is a co-founder and investor, and she will be speaking around taking risks and learning from failure. So without further ado, I will pass over to you, Ami.
Thanks very much, Daisy. That's a very kind introduction. Just a quick introduction to myself. My name is Ami Kotecha. I'm a co-founder at Ataro Real Estate Partners. I have been an entrepreneur involved in startups for the last, coming up to 3 decades soon, in a couple of years' time. I've done about half a dozen in the last 10-12 years, and some more side hustles in the past. They're called side hustles now. They were just called bets in the past. And what I want to do today is talk about an area of entrepreneurship and business that I'm really passionate about, which is about how people value and what's the worth that people put on risk taking, which I think is a really key part of being in the game. So the question, this is going to be an interactive presentation, and I hope everybody enjoys it and participates. In the meantime, I'll just tell you a little bit about where I started my journey. I started my journey as an entrepreneur even before I went to university, doing selling and improving selling skills from the time I was very young. I used to get involved in all sorts of market sales and any opportunity to sell and make a quick dime, including setting up school clubs, etc. I was always involved. That was my passion, and I took it away, went into the work environment after university, and very quickly realized that that's not where I belonged. I was a consultant and I was a banker after that, and I just didn't feel that I wanted to expend the rest of my life and my energies developing and building something that I didn't own. I think the ownership aspect of it was really key to me. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what my goals were. They were nothing like what you hear about these days. They were not anywhere near as articulate as some of you guys make them out. I mean, I hear people with very descriptive passions and objectives. I have to say, I started out with a pretty blank canvas almost 30 years ago, but it's been an extremely interesting journey, and I'll share a lot more with you as we go along. So coming up then, players are all joining me in, so I'm really happy to see that, and I'm going to start the countdown here, and hopefully this will work. So you've got 2 choices: bet on a jackpot with the 50-50 chance to win £3,250, or accept some money now and walk away. What is the minimum you'd accept to walk is the question. Obviously this is a loaded question, but I'd like you to think about there being only 2 choices. So if you were given £1,375 today, rather than a 50-50 chance of winning 3,250, would you take it? Or would you need more? Would you need 1950? Or would you be satisfied with 1625? Or would you take your chances and bet anyway? Oh, that's fantastic. I'm really pleased to see that outcome. Take my chances is the winner. that means that we have a room full of entrepreneurs here, which is wonderful to see. I'm also fascinated to see that no one has chosen 1625, and what I'll take that to mean is that everybody has done their math and knows that there is really no difference in the outcome between taking 1625 and taking your chances. They're actually two sides of the same coin, which are, you're absolutely right to guess or to estimate. And that it's also interesting that the next best is 1950, which means that we have a room full of risk lovers, risk takers, which is a very key ingredient, and you'll see why that's important as we go along. Now, the next one I wanted to ask you is, in one word, describe what you believe it takes to succeed as an entrepreneur. Just in one word, from your experience. Fantastic, what a word. From your experience, tell me what you think. Vision, resilience, grit still winning, innovative, determination, perseverance, phenomenal. These are all amazing characteristics, and there's nothing here that I would disagree with. Belief, and not just believing in oneself, believing in one's project, believing in one's passion. Self-compassion, excellent. Again, that means conviction. That means that you actually are doing something that you truly enjoy and believe in. Failure, wonderful. I would have loved to see that nice and bold. Such an important part of being an entrepreneur is learning to accept failure and to fail wisely and to grow from it. These are all really keywords. Survivor. I think that's, you've said it all. I mean, this is really, really interesting. So you may know this very well, but I think even if it sounds cliched, I actually look at this, and I look at this again and again, and these sorts of surveys are taken regularly at everything from MBA schools to talking to founders in startups, to talking to scale-ups, and to talking to people like me who've been in business for almost 3 decades. And I would 100% agree with the result of this survey, that the biggest obstacle to succeeding and the biggest barrier is this ability or willingness to take risk. And there's a lot in that. I mean, as you'd expect. I mean, it's not just about stepping in with both feet. That certainly is some of it. But as a lot of you know from your experience, it's the whole breadth and depth of what it is that we account as risk. What is it that we recognize as risk? And then what is it that stops us? And why is it still at 98%, despite the fact that we have a phenomenal amount in the last 15, 20 years, a phenomenal amount of data and a real body of knowledge that didn't exist perhaps, and that's grown in the field of business. I mean, startups were never this sexy in my time. Why is it that we still, 98% of the time, the biggest hurdle is about taking and the ability to take risk? From my own experience, I can say that the ability to understand and to break it down into its bits, into its segments, is probably the key trick in how we deal with it and how we become more able to take it. So let's look at something else here. Another very interesting aspect of risk that I wanted to bring up today is this real key one that I often forget myself, and I often confuse when I'm in a different situation. Differentiating between loss aversion and risk. I mean, how many of us are actually really good at understanding loss aversion and dealing with it? Now, I'm not sure, but I will share, I'm not sure how many of you know this, but there is a massive area of behavioral economic science developed by a Nobel Prize winning author called Daniel Kahneman and his colleague Amos Tversky. It's called prospect theory. It's really fascinating, worth reading up on. I want to show you this. It's a Bible for me. This book called Thinking Fast and Slow, written by Daniel Kahneman. I absolutely recommend everyone reads it. what it very clearly says is that sometimes it is loss aversion and not this ability and willingness to take risks that stops us. And what is loss aversion? Loss aversion is simply feeling more pain and associating more pain with a loss relative to a gain. So if you're going to lose £1,000, you associate far more loss with that, far more disappointment with that, than an equivalent contentment or feeling of reward for £1,000, and so on and so forth. It can be interpreted in many different ways. For example, FOMO. I know Leitha is going to talk a lot about that. I'm really interested in hearing what she says about that. But it is a type of loss aversion, feeling left out, feeling the pain of not being part of something. This element of aversion, which is not risk aversion, can actually, like I've said, lead to suboptimal decisions. So it's something to be really wary about. Every time you think about not being willing to take a risk, you've got to really drill into it and say, is it that I'm not willing to accept or calculate or find a way even to mitigate this risk? Or is it that I'm really averse to losing something which I don't feel I will get back quickly if I take this risk? That sentiment is often a big hurdle and doesn't even get quantified enough of times in business decisions. And also, it's really important when you are building complementarity in your team structure, understanding really what drives people. When you ask them at interview, what actually drives you, what's your motivation? People who are interested in joining startups and have an entrepreneurship kind of interest will talk about wanting to take risk and feel the need for reward, but they may not necessarily refer to this. And this is really important to get out as a personality trait, if it exists. Nothing that can't be dealt with, but it has to be recognized first. The second part of dealing with risk, which I think is really key, which I've seen from my own experience, is that risk is a spectrum. It's not one thing. And again, this might be a cliche, but there's everything from the type of risk that Warren Buffett talks about. And he's on the loss aversion end of certainty that if you look at Warren Buffett's way of investing and what he calls his rules of investing, his first rule is don't lose money. His second rule is don't forget rule number 1. That's the sort of risk aversion level that I wouldn't, as an entrepreneur, recommend. So looking at risk on the spectrum and saying that where on the spectrum of risk is this particular risk, how computable is it and mathematically solvable? How much of it is actual pure financial risk that can be turned into money and can be put into a business model? How much of it is my personality trait and my team's social decision-making ability? So we often decide socially, not as individuals. We cooperate. We like to create complementarity. So how much of that risk spectrum is driven by personal risk aversion levels or risk appetite levels? How many risk-aware decisions are being made in the company? I mean, it's a very big part of company cultures, as far as startup cultures go, to talk about risk all the time. And then, of course, there is macroeconomic risk, there's market risk, there's temporal risk, which is really key. So when you talked earlier about grit, perseverance, and all those words that have a temporal element to them, they have a time element to them. They all refer to no immediate gratification. They all refer to sticking your neck out, keeping your skin in the game, keeping your head down and keeping going. And that's the temporal aspect of risk. So again, before you put yourself down as somebody who's a risk lover or a risk averse person, think about how you recognize how risk will change as time goes in your project. And that's really key. And another fundamental point, that unlike, in fact, what Warren Buffett and his, I go back to Warren Buffett because he's a fantastic example of what an entrepreneur need not do. He's a phenomenally wealthy and successful person in his own right, and so is Berkshire Hathaway. But that portfolio strategy, that risk neutralization, is potentially something that is actually almost a corollary to a good entrepreneurial project. So going on to, there is room for different business models for varying risk appetite. So there's nothing that says that one has to be a fearless entrepreneur. Indeed, it makes a lot of sense to bootstrap. I did that for lots of my initial ventures. I mean, for my first venture, my goal, and I was saying to you earlier that I didn't have any kind of outright obvious passions that I was following, but myself and my co-founder, we had two very simple objectives. One was financial freedom. We did not want to be in a situation where we continued to rely on an outside entity for our, for our income, for our salary, but most importantly, for wealth creation, because we didn't think that was actually a possibility. We didn't think it was possible to gain that level of financial freedom by being part of a bigger project. And that's, I know, obviously not true. It's possible to achieve that, but in our circumstances at the time, we did not think that was the case. We thought the best way was to step in with both feet and go into business ourselves. But coming back to this point about risk appetite and business models for different risk appetites, so very plainly, financial freedom being our foremost objective, what we did was we went into a virgin geographic territory, which was in Africa, took a clean sheet of paper and decided to bootstrap. So we were actually not the very risk-loving, risk-favoring in that sense. We took the major risk of leaving our job, so we didn't have this loss aversion phenomena, but after we'd done that, under no circumstances did we have any VCs or any investors standing out there waiting to dish out cash. And the way we realized that we could make this work was taking market share, simply reducing a monopoly to becoming a duopoly initially, and then becoming a competitive player. So we were looking for a lazy monopoly to go and target and compete with. And that is not hugely risky on the risk spectrum, but it can work. There are models of business that can work. And it's about starting with a lot of introspection to recognize where on the risk spectrum you are, what's your appetite, but also what's your capability, what's the capacity of your team. And often sticking to those sorts of very immediate hits and immediate successes can eventually lead you into a very, very safe position, a position of growth where you've started to get ARRs and generate profits, and then you can start doing far more interesting, innovative stuff. And that's a very, very valid business model. I mean, it's worked for me, and we've come through thick and thin using that model, and I would really recommend it. Again, breadth of skills. I think this one thing I'd really like to say again today, that a lot of entrepreneurs out there think that they need to be experts on day one. I actually think quite the contrary. A good breadth of skills, a good exposure to different elements of business, selling, negotiation, cost management, project planning, the works. And I know we've all had to be in a position where we're wearing many hats at the same time, but I can't say enough about the importance of the breadth of skills, breadth of exposure, and diversity per se. There's a lot, of course, that we talk about in terms of diversity, and we talk about diversity in the boardroom and diversity amongst founders. I think that if we really hone it down and we really actually think about what it is, why is diversity so valuable, it's a very, very valuable aspect of mitigating risk, and creating risk-aware decisions that permeate through a company's culture. Diversity is a big catalyst for that, and I'm a massive proponent of it at all levels. So I think if you're ever stuck in a thought that you need to be a phenomenal expert at something before you go and expose yourself to a VC or a investor, I think that all of those people, including myself, I'm an investor now in early stage companies and Series A's. And the one thing I do look for is the breadth of skills, not just the depth and intensity of knowledge, because there are times out there that it's that sort of ability to dive in and cover off and troubleshoot that really is key. So that's on differentiating loss and risk aversion. Okay. What is the most common reason for startups failing? Now, there are reasons out there. There's no market need. There's run out of cash. There's not the right team. There's got out-competed. There's pricing or business model didn't work. I'd like your participation here to tell me what you think it is. That's very interesting. Run out of cash and not the right team have won, according to the audience, but the right answer is no market need. And when I say it's the right answer, of course, there's never any real right or wrong answer, but this is out of a survey done by CB Insights of technology startups specifically, and that's why I decided to use it for this for this event, because I thought it was very, very valuable. And when they say no market need, they mean that there isn't enough of an understanding of product market fit. So 42% of startups fail. My slides are a bit awry, sorry. 42% of startups have failed because of no market need, and that's to do with product market fit. Let's think about that a bit, and what does that actually mean? So, and how, I mean, again, from the risk perspective, is that about market fit? Is it about the blue ocean strategy that goes wrong? What is it? In my view, there are lots of ways that we should all be mitigating risk by testing that through betas and through sort of large test drives and with as large sample sizes as possible. And actually, it's not something that is that should really flummox entrepreneurs. I mean, this is when I saw this, that 42% of startups fail because there is no market need. What I read it to mean is that entrepreneurs are not necessarily, in this case, these 42% of startups that have failed are not necessarily addressing the pain points. I don't believe that there is a real there is a real kind of understatement or underlying statement here that entrepreneurs out there got it absolutely wrong and they didn't read the market, but it's more about the fact that their product did not address the pain point. There was some kind of a loss or dilution of effort or understanding or positioning. And I think, again, coming back to understanding market risk, I think it's this sort of thing is where you've got to sit back and say, did I empower my team to actually understand this risk? This risk is best addressed as a team, the one about market need and about understanding pain points. It's best addressed as a diverse team, and it's something that is totally plausibly dealt with research, with time, with beta drives, with test drives, etc. So I actually think that, in fact, one should take this very optimistically and say, A, failure is a good thing. So if, first of all, you fail because there is no market need, and 42% of the time, if startups fail, so almost 1 in 2, fail because of that, then actually that's a very fixable problem. Take it very optimistically, go back to the drawing board and address it and get closer to the market. Don't necessarily try to create a blue ocean strategy, but try to understand what you can fix that's broken as a first protocol. That ties in very well with the overall understanding and dealing and coping and evaluating risk. So what is the mantra then? to join the game. I think there is no better mantra than what I've said here, do the OODA. And I've picked this up from a Stanford professor's lecture, which I thought was fascinating. She's interviewed all the big and the great in the tech world, the founders of Airbnb, the original founders of PayPal, who've gone on to do a million other things, including Tesla and a lot of other things, founders of Google, Microsoft, etc. So I thought this was a really good one. What OODA means, and I'm not sure why this slide's not coming up to show you, but OODA stands for observe, orient, decide, act, and then repeat. And if you just think about that, that's all about risk mitigation, actually. So first of all, you are observing the marketplace. You're observing your capacity in the marketplace. It's always relative. It's always dynamic. It's always got to do with how much of it is going to be a financial gamble and how much of it is going to be, straight sort of walk in the park. So that whole time of spending time observing is really, really key. Once you've done that orienting, so actually orienting and focusing on the pain point, where do you want to actually hit out and make a difference? Once you've done that, decide, be decisive. Again, failure is a certainty. If you start from that sort of premise, then risk taking becomes that much easier. You shouldn't be in that 98% that can't take risks. And act with knowledge, act with information, and act with the ability to act again. So repeat. This is the mantra that I think really has helped me, has helped my company, and has created a culture of action. Action versus, if you compare companies that actually act, they're the same people that companies that innovate, they're the same people that make mistakes and fail, and they're the same people that create massive successes. So I think OODA is a great way of thinking about the whole plethora or the spectrum of risk and how you deal with it. Just end by saying that if anyone here thinks that there is any gender bias in the ability to take risk, there is no proven evidence for that. There is a lot of research done on the ability of men to take risk vis-a-vis the ability and the capacity and the willingness of women to take risk, but there's absolutely, and all genders in fact, and there is absolutely no conclusive evidence. So my last message to you is go out and OODA. Thank you.
Thank you, Ami. That was a great presentation. I think we can all agree it was really interesting. The next speaker is Leitha. So she's going to be speaking around creating traction and FOMO in early stage startups. So I'll hand over to her in a moment, but we've just had a question asking Ami, what is your biggest motivator?
My biggest motivator till today is financial freedom, and I have to say it might sound very either very archaic or very simplistic, but in fact I love the ability to be in different businesses. I really don't. I'm not driven. I have been in the real estate business for 10, now coming up to 12 years in an active manner, and then passively before then. I think I actually really enjoy reinventing my business abilities to suit different sectors. I've just gone into now investing in technology from being a real estate developer. I don't see the need to specify a specific area or a specific sector. What I really am driven by is the ability to be able to make my own decisions, and that freedom that I get with being an entrepreneur in terms of really indulging when I know that the risk is the right one to take, and really stepping back and learning from my failures. That and optimal lifestyle were my biggest motivators. I have to say the second one is a real balancing act. It's never come true totally. Hopefully it will one day. We're all in life's juggle, and we've all got different priorities at different times. But financial freedom is, for me, certainly the biggest motivator. And I think I'm being very authentic when I say that. So thanks for asking.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I'll hand over to Leitha now.
So thank you so much, Ami. That was a wonderful presentation. I love the interaction, and I also really love how relevant it is kind of across our lives. When we think about, for example, financial freedom, that gives us the option to say no to things that aren't right for us. You know, it gives us leverage when we go into negotiations. It gives us an ability to create our own futures as we see fit. And I think that is something that I've been talking a lot about for probably the past 4 years. I have established a financial manager here in Germany. So I'm co-founder of that operation. And the idea that we have is that, yeah, you can understand your finances, you can understand this information better if you have access to your data and it's delivered to you in a way that is comfortable for you and in a way that is relevant and timely. And so we are focused on aggregating that data and delivering it to you in a form that makes sense for you. So hopefully you can make better decisions about your financial future. That information doesn't have to be locked up in, you know, several different bank accounts here and there. But to get into the discussion that I really want to focus on today, I am going to be talking about traction and FOMO. And the thing that I love about this topic is that it is relevant for us, whether we are doing a business, you know, right now, which is maybe your full-time thing, or if you are in your career, you know, maybe you're still attached to a company. There is relevance in kind of creating traction for yourself there. So you can relate this to, for example, in your early career, maybe you're coming out of school, you're trying to convince people that you are worth listening to, that you are going to be a valuable member of their team. But like, what do you have, right? You have your studies, you know, maybe you have some relationships, maybe you've had like an internship or something, but you kind of need to be inventive about proving yourself. And that's exactly what I'm talking about here when it comes to traction and FOMO for businesses. You know, when you are an early stage business, you don't have that momentum that investors are looking for. You don't have the momentum that partners are looking for. And it's really difficult to recruit people to join your team when you are super small. So you have to be a little bit creative. So the fact is, nobody wants to be the first one at the party, right? Like, I mean, maybe there's the off person who wants to talk to the host and then get out early. But when we think about a small company, it's just not as exciting as a company that's already burbling, already developing, and where you can see that the party is already happening. And I think, you know, a good illustration of that actually is one that went around as a viral meme on the internet. I don't know if you've seen this guy, the dancing guy at the 2009 Sasquatch Festival. So this has been promoted as an idea of like, how do you get something started? How do you get that party started? How do you get people to be interested? You know, at first in this video, you can go watch it. I'm not going to put you through that because it's, you know, it's taped in a very chaotic way, but I'll give you the screenshot here. You can see it's just a lone guy dancing on a hill. You know, who wants to be part of that? Not many people, because he looks kind of like a freak out there, right? And so he is dancing alone for quite some time. I mean, you can compare that to the pre-launch of your product. Who wants to, you know, be part of the pre-launch? Well, he acquires a second dancer, you know, and then you can think about this as beta testing. So maybe that second dancer was one of his friends. Maybe it's a member of his family. You know, as an entrepreneur, you need to bring in the early part of the party, and, you know, maybe that's going to be your besties who are doing that with you to show that you have some initial movement for your product. as he continues dancing along with this second guy, you'll notice that other people start looking over. He starts looking a little bit more interesting, right? So this is developing interest, this is early adopters, and more people are slowly beginning to join. Of course, after a few minutes of this, he is clearly at the momentum stage. You know, he is gaining traction. He has a party that is already in progress. And finally, you know, by the end of the video, we can talk about official FOMO. Everybody is running to this end of the hill. This guy has officially started a dance party. He is the center of everything. And, you know, he was that first mover. He had the grit, the perseverance, the belief in the thing, and he hung out there and he danced until everybody else joined him. So I think this is a good illustration of how you too can think about that difficult process of being the lonely individual at the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey, because we're all going to be there at some point if we are entrepreneurs, and if you are starting a project inside of a company, you know, you might be lonely in that as well at the beginning until you develop support for what you're trying to do and what you're trying to prove. So how do you respond to this? And this is something that I think a lot of people hear early on in their entrepreneurial journeys. When they are starting the company, they're talking to somebody about, would you love to partner with us? Would you like to do some co-marketing? Would you like to put in some angel investment? You know, the answer is often get in touch when you have more traction. And what they want to see is, whoa, that hockey stick, right? So traction, it tends to be this this idea of users, right? It tends to be this idea of great numbers. But when you're in your very early stages, it helps to be a little bit more creative about it. So they want to see profitability, they want to see revenues, they want to see a number of active users and registered users, and they want to see engagement. They want those users coming back on a regular basis. You know, your partnerships and clients are going to show that you have support in network and the amount of traffic you generate. That's all going to be great once you have it, but maybe you don't have it right away. So hopefully you have your friends and family to help you out to that first 100. You might not have 1,000 contacts yet to help you to the first 1,000, but maybe other members of your team can get you there through a network effect. The first 10,000 is going to be pretty difficult. And it's even more difficult to get 100,000 and 1 million, of course, and 10 million, which is what, you know, those who join in for your Series B and Series C are going to want to see. But what do you do in the meantime? How do you gain those customers? How do you gain that support? How do you gain those partnerships? How do you gain the team that you're going to need to help you out along the way? Well, there's the growth path and the revenue path. And some people have both. So if you are a B2B company, you're probably looking at the revenue path. If you're a B2C company, you're probably looking at the growth path. You might be one of those other companies that's a B2B2C or another model. But this is what you should ultimately be shooting for. But, you know, you're a small team, you're ambitious, you're here, you're right at the beginning of your hopeful hockey stick. What do you have? Well, you don't have traction, but you do have promise. And I promise you that promise can deliver results. So what you need to really foment is a little bit of that FOMO. You need to demonstrate your vision and why you are so passionate about this project. And your passion alone can be enough to bring some more people on board, to bring inside that second dancer and that third dancer that will help you make that dance party. So promise can be, again, that spirit, that ambition, your intelligence, your connections and your network. Do you have a great big LinkedIn network? Do you have a huge network of meetup people? That's all great, actually. Do you have a track record and consistency? If you can show that you can build things and that the things that you build are really interesting things, that's already something that you can show for that, that slide in your slide deck, which helps people trust that you can get things done. And of course, if you have intellectual property, or you have a unique selling proposition, if you have some kind of secret sauce that is maybe a special network that you have access to, or something that you know about the industry that nobody else knows about yet, that's even better. But these are the kinds of things that you need to leverage until you get the user numbers that you're hopefully going to have later on. We talk about risk aversion, right? Ami just did a whole section on risk aversion. And risk aversion is absolutely what people are feeling when they look at you alone, dancing on the hill, a lone entrepreneur, or maybe even a pair of entrepreneurs really trying to make it in the world. They're looking at you and they're like, can I take a risk? The answers that you give them in those early stages can help get on board, again, your team, your first users, your first partners, maybe pilot programs, and also maybe some angel funding. So users and clients, obviously this is the big stuff. This is the stuff that you are shooting for. You want those active users, you want the monthly and weekly active users, paid users, and a high margin. This is pay dirt. This is the stuff that, anybody is going to look at and say, wow, that startup has promise, or, this business is really going. In the meantime, if you don't have that, maybe you have blog comments, maybe you have followers, maybe you have downloads. That's an early thing that kind of shows promise for what you're trying to build. Investment. Now think about this, like you have made investment in your business, maybe your family has made investment in your business, and that investment can be time, that investment can be money. It's wonderful to see if it's money, because that means that you are really standing behind what you're doing, and you are eating your own dog food, as they say. If you have unsecured loans, if you have business angels, if you have grants or prize money, crowdfunding, accelerators, put those in the deck, because it's not exactly traction, but it helps to develop that FOMO, that wow, this business is really going somewhere feeling. Obviously your team and network. Now that's a big one for early stage startups, because you can show off what have your team done before? What have you made? Do you have a cool advisory board? Do you have great mentors that are helping you out? Do you have strong partners? Maybe your aunt has a business that is going to allow you to do a pilot with them. That partnership, throw it into your slide deck, and you already have the beginnings of what looks like that traction and that forward momentum. And of course, if you have influencer relationships, that's even better. So if you have a celebrity in your network, if you know Kanye West and they can convince Kanye West to talk about your startup, then all the better. When we talk about business model validation, that also shows your smarts. It shows that you understand your business, that you have thought through this, and that can offer trust to somebody who might want to join you, to somebody who might be evaluating if they can trust you. And so, present these kinds of data, and it will demonstrate your professionalism. Obviously, your progress versus industry barriers. So this is something I mentor a lot of startups, and this is something that I really like to clue in early stage startups on. Like, look, if you've gotten some licensing, if you got a certificate, or you have passed some safety standards, if you have already done some clinical trials or something. Like, put that in there. This is proof that you can get things done again. And it's also, it also helps with risk aversion on the part of any partners or investors that you would be involved with, because they can see, okay, well, they've already passed these hurdles. There's this hurdle coming up, but I already have belief that they can get things done. And so I believe too that they can conquer that hurdle as well. So I want to give you just a little bit of a case study for our startup. Back in 2017, we launched, and our stats look terrible, right? Like, we had not that many users, we had not that many installations, but we were able to say, okay, we were chosen as a promising early stage startup by the Pioneers Conference, right? We were top 30 in an accelerator program, and we've hired people. We have team coming in. And so these were kind of some of the early things that we used as proof of what we could do. But by 2020, we were looking a lot better. You know, we were able to say, okay, we're European Startup of the Year. You know, EBA Day is a big deal if you're a bank. So we were a featured fintech company there. We had an accelerator program. We have a partnership with Visa. You know, you throw those big logos up there, like Google for Startups, or you know, even Mobilecom Debitel. These are things that offer support for the case that you're making, that you are competent, that you can do this, that you have backers, that you have a party that's already in progress. And of course, yeah, throw in your stats, right? At this point, we had enough users and enough growth to kind of raise some eyebrows and say, oh, okay, well, they've got something going on. And this is the point at which we started, you know, to win contests, or to get the foot in the door at a lot of companies that we could use as partners. So it really does make a big difference the way you frame the traction that you already have, the pieces of excitement that you can bring to the table. And you can see, yeah, here and here, these are social proof, and proof that, you know, you can get things done and that others have actually heard of you. So look for the positive relationships. Look for something that shows your good judgment, you know, and your consistency. Obviously, we had better design going on in 2020 as well. And that's another one of those trust elements that I'll highlight in a second that I think is really important. Like, if you have good design, you just look like a bigger, more sophisticated company. And then positive metrics. So these are a few elements that I feel like offer confidence and trust, which you can support your business with, or your entrepreneurship, or your Etsy store, or whatever you are producing, even at a very early stage. If you have great design and UX, people are going to assume that you're actually a much bigger deal than you are. I had this happen with Zuper. We were talking to a huge insurance company, and they had assumed, based on our really nice, site design and presentation, that we were much bigger. And then when they found out, like we only had 100,000 users, they were like, okay, well, come back when you have like more like 1 million. But that does at least start the conversation. And obviously, the more brand recognition and name recognition you can produce, the better. When people have heard of you and they've seen your name a few times, suddenly they have more trust. Any demonstrations of expertise. So if you can do some conferences and be seen as a subject matter expert in your area, that will also help you and give a little bit more support to what it is that you are trying to promote. Obviously press, obviously awards, but also testimonials. Again, if you have a celebrity in the family that you can leverage, do that. Any big brands, like for example, if you get involved with an accelerator program like Google for Startups, do throw that on there. If you have goals beyond profit, this can also be attractive to certain partners, certain investors as well. So think about your social impact as well. And, make sure your employees are also using your products and services and talking about it, and that you are focused on your industry. So for example, you might not be a big deal as a company, but the trend for your product or service might float up. So for example, right now, during the pandemic time, we've seen a lot of issues for brick and mortar that just don't exist for e-commerce operations. And so it kind of floated all of the boats in e-commerce, which created more excitement in that sector. Likewise, if you are in an exciting sector, it might be that you're in craft beer. Craft beer is booming. Whereas food and beverage in general has a consistent and low profit margin. So make sure that you are using that as part of your messaging too. How is the world moving? The world is moving in your direction. This is my co-founder in Mind the Gap, which is our eingetragene Verein, which is German for like a social organization. She has created some great FOMO and some traction for her company by agreeing to be in a national magazine. And so that helps, right? Like if you have expertise in your area, and she does, she worked for Deutsche Bank, she retired from there, and then she started her business in sharing information about investment specifically for women. She was able to leverage that and get into Brigitte, which is a nationally distributed magazine here in Germany. And that was able to get her even more users because, she looks competent. She looks like somebody that you can trust, right? And she also has the backing of this brand. So this was a really wonderful thing for her because she was able to leverage this opportunity to her advantage to create some FOMO and some traction for her company. Some low-hanging fruit, obviously, exploit your connections first, use your friends and family. That's what they're there for, to help you. and do the things that don't scale because you have to at the beginning. These are like you going to events personally and passing out discounts for your product. This is you maybe slipping flyers under people's doors. It's doing things that you wouldn't be able to do if you were a larger company, but you can do them now, right? And larger companies can't take advantage of this kind of thing because it's too labor intensive, but that's what you have right now. You have labor, so use your own labor. And additionally, if you can create these feedback loops where the people who are your first fans, your first users, those initial adopters, if they can invite others and bring others into the party, then that works in your favor as well. So leverage your super fans. And then, of course, the underutilized channels. So these are channels to think about when you are getting started. Maybe you can use Reddit, or maybe you can use another system that is just getting going. Maybe TikTok is your channel choice, and the larger companies aren't going to be able to leverage that, but you, as a smaller player, can. I really liked Gabriel Weinberg's 19 Channels for Growth. I think this is worth taking a screenshot of, and I can send this document out to the rest of you. When we're thinking about growth, it's important to think about this kind of an arrangement where we first think about what's possible, we narrow that down to what's probable, and then we do tests, right? So these are all ways that you can do those kind of unscalable early growth opportunities and test them out. You'll find out what works for your business, what works for your audience, and what doesn't. So is it a party yet? Yeah, I mean, like at this point, he doesn't have a hill full of people, but he has promise, right? He has the promise that he might have a party going, and you can too. You know, that's kind of the point of my talk here, that you can create excitement, you can create this fear of missing out just through the force of your passion and your creativity. I'm open to questions. I'm happy to hear them. And you can also get in touch with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Happy to connect with you there as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much for all of that. That was so informative. And we do actually have a few questions in the chat, so I'll ask them to you first. What is the best advice you received, and what would you recommend to people thinking about starting an online business today?
You know, don't think of it as something that you need to do completely on your own, and don't think of it as something that is bounded by the rules of others. So one of the things that I think is really wonderful in startups is when people really think creatively about their channel, about their product, about a niche market. So for example, if you have a great niche market that you know is not being sold to, then do that. I mean, because those are the kinds of opportunities that other bigger players, like, you know, maybe it's Zalando or Amazon, they can't take advantage of those opportunities, but you can, because you can see it. So look for the underserved markets and the needs in your life. And take advantage of those. I mean, I think Ami would say the same thing. These are your low-hanging fruit in your life.
Another one, let's say you're a developer and have a few ideas for a mobile app, some quicker than others to launch. How do you go about thinking which one to implement first? How do I look at which would provide the quickest ROI, etc.?
Yeah, so I actually read a paper on this last week, interestingly. There was an analysis of data analysis, and one of the things that was a recommendation from this paper was that you think about small size tests, because for example, a really statistically valid test is going to be like a lot of data, and not even Google feels like they have enough data to do their tests. So consider instead a high impact from a small number of users. So they're calling that the fat tail, right? And so if you run a series of thought experiments even, so something lightweight, and test that with a number of users, what really is your MVP? Maybe it's just a piece of paper, maybe it's something on one of the testing tools now, so you could like run people through an example application that doesn't actually exist, but you know, maybe they can click sample buttons and come up with sample results. If you can give people a very lightweight way to test your idea and they love it, yeah, go where the love is and make that your bigger priority. Because those, according to the paper and according to the experience that I've had, those things that you get the strong reaction out of tend to be the things that have a better market behind them. You know.
Yeah, perfect. No, that's really helpful. Obviously, thanks for the presentation. Last but not least, I'll hand over to Ebere. She's going to be talking around ideas to impact framework and 3 pillars for building a sustainable business.
Thank you so much for having me, and good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you online. So today I will be sharing with you the ideas to impact framework, which I developed from starting and running 4 businesses. And especially we're going to be looking at, we're going to explore what are the important ingredients that you need to build a successful and sustainable businesses. I know that the COVID-19 has presented a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities for business owners. Some people are afraid of losing their jobs. So many people have lost their jobs. Some businesses are closing down, especially small businesses like brick and mortar. And so everybody wants to like get into the online world. Everybody wants to run a business. But the important thing is, whatever business you want to start, there are some, things, I call them pillars, you have to consider before you start running this business. I always compare running a business to building a house. So for those of us from Africa, most times we have to build our own houses, like the design, the foundation, the pillars, and you have a vision of what your house will look like after you're done building it. That's how I consider an entrepreneur or a startup who wants to grow a sustainable business. You need to have a plan. You need to have a vision about where what type of business you want to build, a solo entrepreneurship or a kind of business where you can hire team members to support your vision. So before we start, I'd like to formally introduce myself to you. I'm living here in the Netherlands and I'm calling from the Netherlands. I'm the CEO of Ataro Foods. And Ataro Food is a spice packaging company where we used to sell spices in shops and online. So during this period, I saw that we were selling a lot of spices. So we decided to focus more on e-commerce. I'm also the founder of Rise and Lead Women, which is an organization that is focused on empowering women for leadership and impact. And we do this through mentorship and through consulting. Formerly, I owned a restaurant back home in Nigeria before I moved to the Netherlands in 2013. And that restaurant, the way it grew within 3 years is, that's what I want to really share with you if you are considering starting a business. Because the first time I launched a business was maybe 20 years ago, 21 years ago. I had just lost my job and I was pregnant. So I decided to start my own business. And within 6 months, this business collapsed, like all my pay off. I lost everything within 6 months because I had no idea on how to run a successful business. So I was almost giving up. But then I came across a program that was designed to teach entrepreneurs how to build successful and profitable businesses. It was a 3 days boot camp. So I attended it. Before then, I had closed my shop. So after attending the program, I had to implement everything they taught me. And within 2 months, I restarted the business. And from there, I was able to make enough profit to start up my dream business, which is a restaurant. And this dream started when I was coming to the UK every 2 months to buy clothes for my retail outfit in Nigeria. So I said I was going to open a restaurant one day, and then suddenly this dream came back. So the fact that I started a business earlier and it failed very quickly, I was now able to use all that failure as a learning point on what to do to run a business. So the restaurant did very well. The restaurant grew into 2 branches, 7 sales outlets within 3 years. And then we had about 56 employees. We had suppliers, and we kept moving forward, growing into several, a bakery, different things. I had a vision to have 10 branches. And then my husband was transferred to the Netherlands, so I came here with him. And this is how I started. So today, I just want to share with you some of the things I have done. I want to share with you some of the things I learned from, running the first business and it failed, and then coming to a new country and within a year started another business that is now visible and also successful in a country where I don't even speak the language. And so the first pillar, of course, there are so many other things, but I've chosen to talk about 3 pillars because when you build a house, you have a foundation, you have those pillars, but you also have a roof, you have bricks. So I'm not going to talk about all of that because of the time that we have. So the first thing is your vision, the vision of the business owner. You see, I'm more into strategy and not tactics. And I believe that if you have the right strategy to start any business, you don't have to do too many things. You only have to find out, what do I need to do to be successful within within a year, or within 2 years, or within 3 years. And this is where vision is important. So vision is about sitting down to ask yourself, what is it that I want to do that brings me fulfillment? Vision starts from you. Because if you start up a business, at one point, it's not meeting your needs, you're not feeling fulfilled, you're going to let it go. It's not going to be sustainable. So for me, vision starts from you sitting down as the owner to decide, what do I want my life to look like? So what kind of business am I going to build that will give me the type of life that I desire? And so when you think about it, then you start thinking outwards in terms of, what am I seeing around me that I need to change? What am I being called to change? And that is about impact. What problems exist around me that I want to fix? So I don't want to waste so much time on this, because I know some of you are already doing your business, some of you are still considering starting. But I tell you that even though I had a business for 6 months and I felt it was doing, I was struggling, coming back to the drawing table to think about my vision for starting the business helped me to really change things, turn things around. And so there are so many elements you need to consider when you're thinking about crafting your vision. One of them is your purpose. Why do you want to run this business? And also, it's also about, why does my business exist? What is the purpose of your business? What kind of problem is it supposed to be solving? What do you want to achieve? And then the next thing, you as the founder or co-founder, the next thing you need to do is think about your core values. Like, what are my non-negotiables? What is it that if it's not available, we're not going to run this business? Understanding your purpose and your values is going to help you attract the right team. It's also going to help you craft the right message or story about your business, which is an invitation for people to come in as a community. And I'm talking about your customers. And so if you understand how to craft your, articulate your vision, your purpose, craft your value, is going to help you hire employees or, team members. It's also going to help you know when to fire team members. And the next thing you need to think about is, what specifically do you want to offer in the market? It may already be existing. As a matter of fact, it should be existing, because you don't have all the time to start from nothing. So for me, it's about thinking about what is existing and how can you make it better. So think about that, and also think about who needs what you need to offer. At this visioning stage, it's about dreaming. You're coming up with so many things that are not real. You're thinking about who you want to serve, where they are located, are they male, female, how much can they afford? So when I started my restaurant business, I actually wanted to make a change in the way restaurants were being run. Especially, for example, I would enter a restaurant and the salespeople were so rude. The food was so tasteless, or sometimes it's good, another time it's not good. And, sometimes it takes like a long time to eat in a quick service restaurant. So I decided to tackle those 3 problems. And then I had this vision of, having a restaurant in a busy location where people don't have the time. They're looking for a place that can offer them what they need. the right quality, the right price, the right time, and good service and atmosphere. And that was how we launched the business. And we had 200 people coming the first week, and within 6 months, we had 500 people coming in every day. So it's about setting a business that would naturally attract people. And it starts with the purpose of the business, the problem you're solving. And then as a business owner, it's important to have this, I always, it's called vision statement. But the thing is not just a statement, it's a one page that describes your business in a nutshell. So when you go to investors, you can tell a story with your business. You can tell a story about your business, tell a story about your product or your service. And it's that story you tell is what's going to attract people to you, either to fund your business or to buy from you, because they know you have a purpose. Your business is serving a purpose, and they know what you believe in. It's also going to help to motivate your team members to support you in achieving your vision. So one thing is having a vision, articulating it, and then communicating it in a way that people understand and say, yeah, this is for me. I just want to join this movement. The next pillar is what I call is customer development. And somebody already talked a bit about this. No matter how sophisticated or how beautiful your products are, if you don't have customers to buy them, it's just going to be a wasted effort. It's not going to be sustainable. So it's important to take your time after the visioning, which is dreaming, to come out and test your idea. So you come back again based on what you've written and ask yourself, what is it that I'm trying to produce? Who needs what I want to sell? It's not enough to just, publish it on social media. Everybody likes it, all those vanity metrics. It's about asking people to put down their money for it. So before you waste your time, your energy, resources, building something from scratch, it's important to test to see if people are willing to put down their money even when it's not built yet. This is going to help you to know whether to move forward with it, with the idea or not. And one of the ways, several ways you can do this is through, carrying out a survey, sending it out by emails, or creating a wish list on your website, like a landing page where you collect data or ask people to buy something and promise them it's going to be ready in 2-3 months. Or for me, the best way for me is to call my friends, or what I call the kitchen table strategy. So whenever I want to launch something new, I invite people I know, maybe to my house or to a restaurant, and we talk about it. And then I get their opinion and see how I can refine that product to match what people need. So yes, the vision starts from you, but then whatever you're offering needs to be aligned with what people are asking for. I've seen and I've mentored a lot of women who tell me that they love their business, they're so passionate about it. And because they're passionate about it, they expect everyone else to be passionate about what they're offering. And then they're disappointed when nobody cares. So it's always important to, first of all, test your product. Somebody mentioned it earlier on, MVP, minimum viable product. Get it out as quickly as possible and test it, succeed before you launch. Now, the next thing you need to do, which is the third pillar, is building a strong team. And during the process of setting your vision for your business, you may have decided to be a solo entrepreneur. You want to do everything alone. Or like me, you want to build a company. If you decide to build a company, it's more sustainable because you can't work alone for a very long time. It will wear you out, no matter how strong and powerful you are. I was surprised when I came to Europe. I met a lot of solo entrepreneurs. I didn't see that in Nigeria. Whether you're a man or woman, when we start up a business, we kind of build a company and hire and employ people. And so it was my first time of seeing everybody working for themselves. And then I hear people say that they are building their own website, they're handling their own social media, they're doing everything. The truth of the matter is, if you want to build and grow a business, it's okay to start doing those things initially, but the best thing is to have an organizational structure where you already know who is supposed to be doing what. Maybe there are 5 people that should be handling your business and you don't have anybody supporting you. It's important that you create job description for each position and put your name on the 5 of them and watch, so that when you start doing it, as soon as you start making some profit, you hire people and then you let it go, because you've already developed a structure and a system on how to make it work. Another thing is, if you want to build a sustainable business, please start from the beginning to hire people. You may not be able to pay people, so you have to enter into some partnership agreement with co-founders, your first management team. They may not be taking salary, but then you give them some shares. Or you have like a board of advisors that you can run to, people you can run to and ask for help. But it is very, very critical that at the early stage of building your business, you're thinking about hiring a team to support you so that you can build a successful business. It may be expensive, it may be costly to hire people, but it's more costly to do it alone, because you're going to drop a lot of balls and you will lose money, you will lose clients, because you're not fulfilling their order very quickly. So I always encourage people, it is important. Now, one of the reasons people do not like to hire people is not only because of it's not only because of the cost. It's because they don't know how to manage people. And for you to be able to build a sustainable business, you need to increase your leadership capacity. Your business cannot grow beyond your own leadership capacity. It doesn't matter the tactics that you want to use. You have to grow yourself as a leader, your personal leadership. And then when you grow yourself as a leader, you will be able to understand your strengths, your weaknesses, the things that you don't like to do. Like for me, I always think in terms of strategy, marketing. I think in terms of, handling large projects and breaking down, complex projects. But anything in between, someone else needs to do it. So if you don't understand yourself as a leader, you won't be able to delegate, because you won't know what to delegate to your team members. Another reason why you need to develop yourself is when you learn about yourself, you're going to make room for other people. If you understand you have weaknesses, then you will stop judging other people. So you bring in people, you also test their own strengths, their weaknesses, know what to ask them to do, and know what you find somebody else to do. So leadership development is actually for the main purpose of growing your business. It helps you to hire people. It helps you to communicate your vision to the people you're hiring. It helps you to, manage, form partnerships with clients, partnerships with external stakeholders. You will be focused on strategic work, not on tactical works. Strategic work are these things you do that bring in money immediately. And every other thing like administrative tasks and all those vanity metrics is important to, delegate them, get somebody else to handle them, while you as a business owner is always going out, networking, finding new ideas to help you improve your business. So as a leader, you also need to know that everything rests on you. So you can't delegate and forget about it. You have to understand how to delegate and how to follow up. And it starts with looking at your strategic objectives. What is your goal in your business? What are your priorities? what are the action points that need to be done every day. Based on that, you create the job description, and then you hold the people who you've hired accountable to deliver what you've given them to do. And of course, if they can't do it, you can also coach them, mentor them until they're able to do it. But if they do not follow your core values, you don't need to waste your time. So this is where, as women, we get very soft and gentle, and then our business is going down the drain. We need to follow the processes, the structures of how to run a successful business. And having said this, just for me to recap what I've said earlier on, is that for you to start, build and scale a profitable and sustainable business, you need 3 pillars. And those pillars is your vision for your company. If your vision is very low and small, then you're not going to grow a very robust kind of business. And also, your vision is going to help you be able to articulate your core values. It can take, when I work with clients, it can take like 3 weeks for them to be able to articulate their core values. And then when we talk about, vision statement, mission statement, it all comes from that purpose and your core values about what you want to bring into the market. Once you're clear on that, it's going to help you to communicate these values and create your story so you can attract funders. In Rise and Lead Women, we are always advocating for more women in leadership and also for women to be funded. But we tell the women, if your business, if what you're presenting to an investor is not convincing enough, nobody's going to give you money just because you're a woman. So the investors want to hear your story, your purpose. They want to understand your core values. They want to understand what you're trying to create. And they want to see whether you're getting traction already. Are people interested in your products? And once you're able to convince them based on, your MVP, these are the things, or your list or something concrete, then they want to check your team, like who is with you. Even if you're not paying them, it's important to have a team to support you. And once you're done with this, then you're ready to launch a business, and the rest of the things like marketing, the rest of like sales, all those other important elements of growing a business will now come in later. So I need to stop now so that I have time for questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ebere. That was another really great talk. All 3 have been so informative. So again, thanks to all 3 of you. Just a few questions that we have in the chat. How long is a decent timeline to test your MVP before throwing in the towel? 1 year, 2 years, etc.
You see, all of these things depend on your product or your service. So there is no best timeline. Everybody that is starting a business really needs to do it very quickly. So when I mentor people, I tell them within 3 months, we should be able to get some revenue. So we take these processes I've just described and we start selling. They start making phone calls. Some of them invite people to their sitting room and then try to sell. So that MVP, as far as I know, you shouldn't waste a lot of time. Some people are very, action oriented, action takers. People, I love results, okay? But for some people, they need to first deal with their mindsets. They need to first gain that muscle to let go of their self-doubts about what they are producing. So we hold their hands, keep pushing them to go out there. So anything from 3 months, 90 days to 6 months is okay. And it shouldn't be for too long. 90 days is perfect. So the idea is to find out whether you should continue building your business, because the MVP doesn't mean you have built your business. It's just like testing something. And what I do sometimes when I want to produce courses or different things, I do a survey, and then I write to the people who told me what they need, and then I send it to them without building anything like 2-3 things and see what they're interested in. Then you come back and refine your product before you finally launch. So I would say 3 months is enough.
So another question, how fast is as quickly as possible without rushing the product?
You see, I'm very sure that we all do different businesses, right? So I would like to give you an example with my food business. So when I was packaging spices, it took me a long time. What I did was I went to a trade show in Amsterdam, one of the largest trade shows in the Netherlands, and I bought like a small hand sealer and I packed my spices myself quickly and took it to the market to see if people like it. So then I was doing a lot of back and forth with my producer, my manufacturer, to make them to try and refine the taste. We went back and forth for almost another 2 months, 3 months. It took a longer time. So everything was 6 months between the time I said, okay, this taste is okay, people are interested in it, till the time he produced my first batch of spices. But for some people who are into other type of tech businesses or even consulting, it shouldn't take a long time, right? Once let's say you're doing educational courses, you confirm who wants to buy it. You have to really get on it and tell people, be very truthful. You know how fast you are, that, okay, it's not going to be ready until the next 3 months or 6 months or 1 year. It's like writing a book. People order it and you tell them it's going to come out next year in 6 months' time. You have to be realistic. But the first thing is to have something little that is ready. Go out there and start selling it first. And then once it's a part of your survey. So it depends on how fast you are. And that's what I can say about that.
Would you happen to know the average amount of money people spend or should spend on an MVP? And in addition to that, what are some of the factors that determine if an MVP can proceed to its version 1?
Okay, so let me give an example again with creating a course, okay? And then I'll also talk about the product side. So if I'm selling a program for, let's say, 500 euros, I want to give it out at 100 euros first. And then I'll tell the people that, this is just a trial. For some people, they might even want to give it for free, but, it's not good to give it for free at that time because you want to see whether people are willing to pay for it. And the idea is for people to try it out and give you some feedback so you can go back and refine it. And also they could give you some testimonials. So all of that. So you see something that you're supposed to sell for 500 euros, I've, cut it down to 100 euros. So for my spices, which is not an expensive product, I started it with the same price I wanted to sell it, which was $4.99. So what I used to do is if people buy it, I give them a lot of samples of the other spice because I have like 5 tastes. I give them samples to go and try. So because the production cost was already too high, you don't also want to run at a risk of losing your costs. But you should be comfortable to invest some money into your MVP as well. If you have the money to spend, it's about risk taking, like we heard today. So decide. The idea is to find out how much are people willing to pay, and you need to be very flexible. You can tell this person, you see how they accepted it, then after a month you increase it and see how the market is accepting your product, and from there. But you must know your pricing, how to calculate your pricing based on your costs of production and also all the logistics and everything that goes into producing your particular product.
I want to thank you all. This has been very educational for me, and it's it's been like a refresher and a reminder of, okay, what do I want to do? And Amy, your answer was like exactly what I was looking for, to be honest, with financial freedom. I wanted to ask you, Ebere, something. Some of the best people I've met were from Africa, and 2 of them were from Nigeria. And we are still keeping in touch, even though we are totally far away. But I wanted to ask you, when you moved to Netherlands, did you have this thing first to like find a job, or did you straight away knew you want to start a business?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, before I moved to the Netherlands, I had been in business for like, I think 13 years or 15 years. So I didn't look for a job. Initially, being an expat wife, you know, I was networking with other women, and then I realized that I needed to do something more fulfilling. Like you said, I needed to do something, you know, something different. And I mean, naturally, I was supposed to start up a restaurant, but when I did my market survey, I found out that the Dutch people didn't know much about West African food. So instead, I started offering cooking workshops where I was teaching the culture, you know, and food of West Africa, getting them to, taste it. And it was from there I started formulating the spices. And then I started, you know, selling. So no, I found my calling in entrepreneurship. I can't imagine going back to work for anyone. Yeah,
I can understand that. That's something that's a point I'm looking forward to get to. Like, okay, I want to get to the point where I cannot imagine myself working for someone else. But thank you so much for the answer. Yeah, it's very inspiring. Thank you for doing this. It's from the beginning, it's been so cool, and I think it helps a lot of people who and answers a lot of questions of a lot of people that cannot find them online, or that you don't find specific answers unless you do a lot of research, and some of us don't even know where to start.
I'm glad we can be of help. Obviously, it's not down to us, it's down to all the fantastic speakers. So again, thank you to all 3 of you for obviously spending your time and giving out your advice and sharing your stories. Thank you everyone for coming, and again, thank you to all 3 of you for getting involved.